you said something very interesting in a private conversation that kind of just touches on what you mentioned there, that although people's testosterone levels come back in the quote unquote, I'm using inverted commas, healthy range, they can still be suffering from the effects of low testosterone and all the negative impacts. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because again, testosterone sometimes can feel like a panacea. I've had guys 22, 23, 24 who are like, my testosterone is low, and they'll go through their symptoms and they're drinking 5 cans of Monster a day. They're like, why do you think your testosterone is low? They're like, well, I can't get it up with my girlfriend. I'm like, you have stim dick. I was like, you have your nervous system is fried from your stimulants, and you've a problem. I was like, cut back on your Monster and see if that works. And then they'll come back 2 weeks later, like, oh, I'm fine again. Never mind. Testosterone's okay, I think. But they're kind of basing it off what you said. I've got a symptom and it's normally libido based, or I'm not putting on muscle fast enough. They're the two I see commonly with young guys. But where I think the real important areas that you're bringing awareness to that you mentioned there is the mental health issues. And some guys, particularly younger men in their 20s, even in their 30s, that's still considerably young when it comes to testosterone, they're coming back with a range that is technically in the healthy range, but they still have all these negative impacts, particularly the mental health side. Will you talk to us a little bit about being on the lower end of the healthy range? And mine, from what I can gather, is on the upper end of the healthy range. It's not over, but it's very not noticeable. Again, I have, touch wood, no issues physically that I've noticed, but there's a lot of men listening, and there's a bit of a taboo around even talking about it because of whether it's, the toxic masculinity of, grr, don't admit when there's a problem, or just an embarrassment to talk about that specific thing. Talk to us a little bit about the low end of the healthy range, where people might be suffering with the negative side effects, but they don't know what to do next because they got the blood report and it came back technically normal.
Yeah, okay. So most blood tests, so if you look at that report, Brian, most blood tests have this, they'll all have this normal range beside them, and that normal range tends to be quite tight. Okay, so it's kind of it's fairly narrow, and it doesn't change over time, that kind of the so-called population normal range. Okay, so the range, say if you take something like cholesterol or glucose or whatever, the range for a 25-year-old is the same as that of a 55-year-old. Okay, it doesn't really change over time. That's not the case for a hormone that changes and decreases as we age. Okay, so having a kind of an overall population range is a little bit problematic. Okay, so first of all, you have to make that range really broad to kind of say to cater to everybody across all age groups. So you see from your own kind of say testosterone number there, that's kind of say towards the higher end of the range. The range there goes from 8 to 30. So that's almost like a 4x increase within the range. And so what the inference there is that, well, say if I'm a 30-year-old and I get a testosterone level of 10, and this happens a lot, and this is what I'm kind of encountering, and I can understand that at a GP level, I can't understand that at an endocrinology level, but they will be told your testosterone. This is a story that I hear at least once a day. Okay, your testosterone is fine. So if you're a 30-year-old with a testosterone level of 10 with fairly significant symptoms, your testosterone is fine, whereas you may actually be well below the average for your age, and that may actually be well explaining. Now, I caveat that with, you need to rule out other causes for why somebody's feeling the way they are. I'm not going to attribute it all to a low testosterone, but certainly looking at it through that lens of like where it should be for someone's age group is an important consideration. Now, the extension of that is that when blood work comes back, including testosterone coming back as normal, so therefore one can't find a reason why somebody's feeling so bad, particularly around the mental health piece. But the normal reaction then is to kind of maybe start treating things in silos. So it's like, well, here's some Viagra or Cialis for the ED, or speak to a nutritionist around your better diet or whatever that might be. And when it comes to the mental health side of things, prescription pad, antidepressants, SSRIs, etc. And that's a story I hear once a day. I felt awful. I got blood work done. Everything was normal. I asked for a testosterone score. That was also normal. I ended up on SSRIs, and then 5 years later, they're having a conversation. They're just trying to troubleshoot it themselves, and they're kind of exploring, rightfully, kind of say other potential solutions to that. So that's some. So like the point that I'm making is that normal is not always normal. Okay, is it normal for you? Okay, so one man's 20 is another man's 5. So clinical interpretation is really important. So what I would say is, like, get a hormone panel done. okay, and then speak to somebody about it, okay? So it may, and again, just to kind of continue that a little bit, it may be appropriate for somebody who's 55 to go on testosterone replacement therapy because maybe fertility is not as big of an issue, testosterone kind of a negative impact on fertility, and whereas that might not be the case for a 25-year-old. So there's lots of kind of like different criteria that need to be met in terms of like whether or not it might be a good idea for somebody to go on testosterone. So blood work is a part of that, symptoms are a part of that, lack of other explanation is a part of that in terms of like the overall health piece. And then where is somebody at in life? So are they somebody who's 25, who's in a relationship and looking to have family in the not too distant future, or is that part of their life behind them and they're like, look, I don't need to worry about fertility, these issues are fairly significant for me, and my testosterone, while not technically abnormal, appears to be towards the lower end of the scale. Is there ways for me to improve testosterone through either lifestyle, supplementation, or perhaps, kind of say, the last part of that then is medication in terms of testosterone replacement?